यत्सङ्कल्पात्तपतितपनो वाति वातसमिन्धे वह्निर्धत्ते धरणिरुदते लङ्घते नैव वेलाम् सोऽयं श्रीमान् निखिलजगताम् अन्तरात्मावतीर्णो धर्मं रक्षन् दिशतु कुशलं स्वामिनारायणोऽयं। सजान स्वामी महाराज निजय, अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराज निजय, भगत जी महाराज निजय, शास्त्री जी महाराज निजय, योगी जी महाराज निजय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराज निजय। In the divine presence of our beloved Guruji, Pujya Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Pujya Mahan Swami, Pujya Ishwar Swami, and dearest devotees, I'd like to begin with a small example from Freud. I believe most of you have heard the name of Freud. He is one of the greatest psychologists the 20th century has ever produced. He writes in one of his books, outlining the attitude of a little child. He gives a personal example from his personal family. He says that once he, with his wife and 2 children, they went to a fair. And when they went to the fair, they stayed there for 2 or 3 hours, and suddenly Freud, he found his own wife crying. Freud looked at her and said, "What's happened?" She said, "I can't find our 2 little children." Freud said, they can't be far. It's a fair, it's a small circus, so they must be around. They looked for them for 1 hour, still they couldn't find them. The wife, she was so upset that she sat on a small bench and she started crying. Freud said, "Come on, you start remembering what happened, where you went, how they might have got lost, and things like that." She started recollecting everything. Still, they couldn't find them. Then Freud asked her one more thing. He said, "Did you tell them anything this morning? Did you say anything this morning?" She said, "Yeah, I told them that the fair will be good, the circus will be good, everything. Remember again, did you say anything?" She goes, "I told them that don't go by the river." He said, "Let's go there." They went there and they found the 2 little kids paddling in the river most comfortably. Freud writes down that it's in the attitude of little children to do what you tell them not to do. Freud said this for little children, while Gunadityananda Swami has something else. He said, it's in the attitude of man to do things what is not supposed to do, and not to do things what is supposed to do. He said, "જે કરવાનું હોય તે ન થાય and ન કરવાનું હોય થાય એ જ મોહ." What is ignorance? Gunadityananda Swami said this more than 120 years or 40 years before Freud ever got down to this basic element. Think of the wisdom Gunadityananda Swami was endowed with. Think of the spirit. Think of the logic. Think of the way of conveying a message Gunadityananda Swami had in him. Long time ago, before even studies of the minds were made by the great people today. And that is why we have gathered here to celebrate the birthday of a great saint. Now, all of us know that we are here to celebrate his birthday. Many of us have probably been to birthday parties before. Or many of us might have invited other people to a birthday party. But tell me, any birthday we've been to, has it ever been a birthday celebrated by other people of somebody else? Everybody gets their birthday celebrated, but when they celebrate it themselves, how many others celebrate your birthday? Well, this is Gunadityananda Swami. Not only here we've gathered to celebrate his birthday. In India, thousands of people must have gathered in Gondal to celebrate his birthday. In Africa, in London, everywhere. It's not today. For more than 200 years, people have been celebrating his birthday. And 200 years from hence, people will be celebrating his birthday. Why? Sometimes we celebrate the 21st birthday, that's all, but we have to do our own. But saints like Gunathan Swami have lived such a life, the people will never forget them. Why? For one thing in his life was so much that nobody could match. Instead of me saying it, let us see in the words of somebody else. If you've heard of Yogi Krishna Prem, Yogi Krishna Prem, he was an English gentleman. He was a teacher at the Oxford University teaching English. His name was Ronald Nixon. And he himself was so inspired that he became a sadhu in India. Now he was an English gentleman, a European. Him being a sadhu, and during the time when Britain was ruling India, what happened? The once he was traveling in his sadhu garment in a small train in South India. He was in a small compartment in third class. One white lady, she must have been a very snobbish lady, posh type lady. She got onto the same compartment and she started searching for a place away from Indians. Because that was there. They had prejudice. She didn't want to sit next to the natives, as they call them. So she started searching for a place and she sat in a small corner. But then she got puzzled that there was a white gentleman wearing orange clothes and he was sitting right in the middle of all Indians. 2 hours passed by in the whole journey. She couldn't keep her anger, so she quickly blurted out. She said, "Hey, are you an Englishman?" Yogi Krishna Prem said, "Yes." So what were you doing? So I was a teacher in the Oxford University. And she said, "But, I mean, why did you leave your country? Why have you betrayed your nation? What have you found in this nation? It's a slave country. You renegade. Why have you been a traitor? Why have you given up Christianity? What have you gained by coming to India?" Yogi Krishna Prem says nothing. He keeps quiet. She went on with the rancor, the same bitter tongue as posh people are usually gifted with. She went on with the same bitter tongue, cutting and slicing him up again and again. He kept quiet. Few of the other people, they got upset. They were going to rise up and throw her out. But Yogi Krishna Prem said nothing. One last word she said, "What have you gained in this country? What have you gained?" Yogi Krishna Prem put his hand down in a small bag and produced a small image of God and said, "Madam, I have my Krishna." He said, "Madam, I found gold dust in India." And she goes, "What's gold dust?" "Gold dust, the sand that has come off the feet of the great saints of India. This is gold dust." Imagine, if a white man, he could feel that the sand that touches the feet of the saints of India is gold dust, then us, we have met Gunatithanand Swami. We believe him to be Akshar, and when we gather here today to celebrate his birthday, it is not just a normal birthday celebration. It's celebrating the birthday of a saint who was full of gold or love for God. So much so was he engrossed in God, so much so was he spirited with God, that when you really examine his life, we find out not a second elapsed without his remembering God. We find, but what's so important about God? You might say, "Swamiji, because you're a sadhu, because you've given your life to God, you might praise God." But let me divert a bit here to give you the importance of God. Have you heard of the Niagara Falls? Everybody, yes. That's not a difficult question. If you haven't, you shouldn't be in America. But you've heard of Niagara Falls. Now, which is the biggest HEP power station in America, hydroelectric power station? Niagara Falls. It produces so much electricity that from the Niagara Falls, some of the electricity is transported down to New York. And if you remember the 77 blackout, when one little thing failed to give a feedback, there was a total blackout in New York, and so many lifts, so many underground trains, people were scared, people left their homes, people were going away from cities, and there was a big small TV series that came in England, "Should we turn back to the plow?" Because of such complex in this system. Now, slight failure in electricity, people were disturbed. But tell me, who was the man who designed the HEP power station behind the Niagara Falls? It was the greatest scientist that America has ever known, a mathematician. His name is Charles Steinmetz. Charles Steinmetz, he was a 4 feet 3 inch little man. He had a hump. He came from Germany as a refugee. America was going to deport him by looking at him. He looked so ugly. He was no value to America, but somehow he managed to get into America. And if you've heard of the Wheatstone Bridge in science, that was designed not only by Wheatstone but Charles Steinmetz. He was the man who gave us a system of converting AC DC into AC. And only through AC current can you transport electricity through longer distance. Charles Steinmetz was the wizard behind this whole situation. Now when Charles Steinmetz was at his peak of his fame, Henry Ford used to worship Charles Steinmetz. When Henry Ford died, in his personal locker, where they found all the things that Henry Ford cherished, like somebody might have gold, in that they found a small test tube. In that test tube there was nothing. There was nothing in that test tube. But when you opened the test tube round, it said, in this test tube, there is the breath, last breath of Charles Steinmetz. Henry Ford valued him such. Now this was Charles Steinmetz. So when he was asked, what according to you, dear scientist, the greatest mathematician of America, what according to you, in which field will men and women make progress in the next 50 years? And he said, in 50 years to come, men and women will realize that material things do not bring happiness. And when that day comes, the scientists will turn the laboratories to the study of God and prayer. And when that day comes, we shall see more progress in one generation than we have seen in the last 4. These are the words of Charles Steinmetz. When he says, when somebody realizes God, he shall see more progress in one generation than the last 4, Gunatityananda Swami was the embodiment of God. And that is why we say Gunatityananda Swami was one of the greatest person ever lived this earth. He was one of the greatest man who has ever walked the earth, and that is why we're saying it. It's not because I am saying it, it's because people value God, scientists value God, and other people value God, and Gunatityananda Swami had the whole embodiment God in him. So much so that Gunatityananda Swami has said in one of his vat, he says, let's see again to give you a bit more illustration. You've heard of Steven Spielberg. Everybody in America must have heard of Steven Spielberg. He is one of the the director who's made the great movies, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Poltergeist, and other small movies. Steven Spielberg is one of the greatest directors Hollywood has produced. He was asked that he gets one new thought, one creative thought every 13 seconds on average. On average, he gets one new thought every 13 seconds. When Gunatityananda Swami was asked the same question, do you know what Gunatityananda Swami said? Gunatityananda Swami said that if I was to get a thought different from God for 1 second, my mind would split into 2 and I would die. In his entire life, he was totally engrossed in God. He could get no other thought but God. That is stability of mind. It's not how many different thoughts you get. A mental man might get one thought, new thought every second, but that doesn't mean he's stable. It's a man who gets one thought every second, every time, and one possession in his mind. He is very stable. Gunatityananda Swami always thought of God. He was transfused with the love of God, and that is why we say Gunatityananda Swami is so great. So powerful was he that once he was traveling through the jungle. Nowadays we're lucky, we get cars. A lot of Hari Bhaktas can, Swamiji, let's go here and there. Gunatityananda Swami, he had to walk from one town to another town, yet he never hesitated. Once he was walking with all his devotees and saints following behind. They were walking through the jungles, and they came to a desert-like area. Then they came into a small jungle, and then again they came into a small desert-like area. While they came there, Gunatityananda Swami was walking at the back of the whole following. The following was walking ahead. Then suddenly they heard a voice from the back calling out, everybody stop. And everybody stopped. He said, why here, in the middle of nowhere? I mean, if there was picnicking time, they were sitting down and doing satsang, we would sit on the lawns and nice green grass. But why here in the desert? Who stops us? Then there's a voice quickly traveling. He says, Gunatityananda Swami has asked us to stop. Everybody says, why? Everybody comes closer to Gunatityananda Swami. Gunatityananda Swami takes them closer to a dead body of a cow. The body had been decaying for more than 3 or 4 days. Imagine, if you've ever been to India or here, if a small mouse dies in your house, within 1 day it starts to stink like hell. If a cow dies, which has been pecked by vultures, which has been pecked and bleeding by small animals and things like that, and that has been there for more than 4 days, imagine the stink it produces. Now everybody kept far. Everybody kept far. Gunatityananda Swami says, come closer. He says, how come? He is a sadhu who is uninterested in violence. He is a sadhu who hates meat, who is so pure. How come he's taking us closer to a dead body of a cow, which is stinking and nobody can stand the smell? Gunatityananda Swami says, come closer. Everybody came closer, but not with guard. Everybody had that small handkerchief or the clothing around their nose, because to protect them from the smell. Gunathan Swami got them round the whole dead body and said, get rid of your small mask, please. So everybody, with due hesitation, they got rid of that, and the smell was terrifying, terrible. Then Swamiji said one thing. He said, how does it smell? Nobody had to answer. Everybody knew how it smelled. Gunathan Swami said that if I were to take away my powers from this universe, the whole universe would stink up like this. Imagine. So powerful was Gunathan Swami that he knew that if his powers, if the power of God was extracted or drained away from humanity or life, imagine 4.5 billion people dead at one time. Nobody to bury anybody. Imagine all the creatures dead at one time. Who would bury what? What sanitation? What pollution free? Everything would stink up. But this power, he didn't boast that it was his. He said it is due to the grace of God. That is the power of God. You might feel so powerful was he, and automatically his life must have been so powerful. But let me give you an insight into the life of Gunathan Swami. For more than 40 years, Gunathan Swami had been the Mahant of Junagadh temple. His fame had traveled far and wide, far afield into every temple nearby. Now some of the Mahants from a nearby temple, they wanted to meet Gunathan Swami. It so happens when Swamiji is here, so many people come to meet Bapa. It so happens when Swami Shri is in Ahmedabad, so many people come to meet Swami Shri. It so happened in Junagadh that some Mahants from a nearby temple, they came to meet Gunathan Swami. Now first thing you do is to come into the courtyard of the temple. It's a big courtyard. Sometimes the courtyard is filled with dirt. So one small simple sadhu was sweeping the courtyard. The sadhus, they kept a bit far from the sadhu. They were concerned with the Mahant, not a sweeper. So these Mahants kept a bit far. Then from far they asked, where's the Mahant of Junagadh? We want to meet him. And that sadhu humbly pointed, he said, go into that small chamber. He'll soon come and occupy the throne which belongs to him. All the sadhu from far, quickly avoiding this sweeper, they went into the small chamber and waited for the Mahant of Junagadh to come. Within 15 minutes, one sadhu walked in. He took his seat on the throne. These Mahants who had come to see, they were shocked. They said, we come to see the Mahant. He says, I am the Mahant of the Junagadh temple. He said, but you were just sweeping the courtyard. We thought you were the sweeper. Gunathan Swami said, he who serves is a true head. He who sweeps is a true Mahant. These people, they fell at his feet. Why? Here on one end, Gunathan Swami could say, if I took away my powers, the whole world would stink up. He knew it. He was powerful. Yet, on the other end, he was so humble. He could pick up the broom and he could sweep himself. How many of us can do that if it was our own birthday? How many of us could do that if so many people would come to sing praises of us? Pramukh Swami Maharaj himself has done that. When Swamiji at the age of 27, he was given the leadership of a whole movement at the age of 27. Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he was the one after the Sabha who went into the kitchen and started washing up the utensils. How many of us do that at home, even when it's our own home? Swamiji, on his great day, you found him washing up the utensils. This is the greatness of saints like Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Gunathan Swami. So much so that their life is totally engrossed in God. To give you in a short, simple illustration, the difference between us and Gunathan Swami and Swami is, each one of us eats like him. Each one of us sleeps like him. We walk like him, we talk like him, some of us even talk better. Some of us even, saints, even dress like Swami Shri. But there's a heck of a difference between Swami Bapa and other saints. There's a lot of difference between Gunathan Swami and other saints. You know what the difference is? If I take your hand and put a small mark on your hand, you'll start to bleed. If I cut it up with a small knife, your blood is red, my blood is red. Human blood is red. Every mammal that walks on earth, on land, their blood is red. But if you go down into the sea and catch a lobster, if you cut a lobster, the lobster bleeds, but the blood of the lobster is blue. Every creature that lives in the sea, if you cut that creature, the blood of the sea creature is blue. They're exactly, the scientists started examining why the difference between blue and red blood. They came to one conclusion. They said that the composition of the blood of a human being and the composition of the blood of the lobster is exactly the same. Every material, every molecule is exactly the same. There's no difference. Then why the difference of color? The only difference, they said, that in the blood of man, there is the presence of the atom of iron. Now iron produces the redness in man. Just one difference, the atom of iron. And in the blood of lobster, the presence of the atom is copper. Copper salts are blue. Everything's exactly the same, but in one there is copper, in one there is iron. The heck of a difference, blue and red. We and Swamiji will look the same, everything is same. But the difference is, in our heart there is Jagat, world, and in his heart there is God. And that's why the difference between red and blue. That's why Swami Shri is divine. That's why he's above us. That's why he's so great. And that's why we've gathered here to celebrate the birthday of a great saint. We are filled with the world. We are filled with the small things. But the only thing we could do today is to try and understand them. I'd like to give the example of Swami Bapa, Pramukh Swami Maharaj. The Swami Shri, once he was traveling nearby Vidyanagar. And it happened that in Vidyanagar, it's very difficult that the travel is quite sometimes difficult if you go by into smaller towns. Now Swami Bapa, he had gone to a small town near Vidyanagar, and Vidyanagar is a place full of education. The name suggests it, Vidya Nagar. Now Swami Shri was in a simple town near Vidyanagar. Now one man, he was a farmer, he was intelligent, and in his farm, with tremendous, let's say, labor and intelligence and diligence, he had grown a mango tree. And on the same mango tree, he had managed by crossbreeding, interbreeding and hybriding and things like that, he had managed to grow 4 or 5 different types of mangoes on one mango tree. You know, there are different types of mangoes that come in India. So it's very difficult to grow. You could grow 4 or 5 different ambas or mango trees for 4 or 5 different mangoes. But on one tree, he could grow 4 or 5 different mangoes on one tree. Now Swami was very pleased with his ingeniousness. And then Swami was praising him. This man started saying, Swami, કે આપણા દેશમાં અહીંયા તો ગવર્મેન્ટ કંઈ સમજી જ શકતી નથી. The government can't understand me. Nobody can understand me. I mean, if I was in foreign country, they would give me a lot of subsidy. They would give me a lot of grants. And because I'm doing good work, they would have lifted me. પણ થાય શું કે આપણા દેશમાં કોઈ સમજી શકતું નથી. Swami Shri turned around and Swami Shri said, અમારું પણ એવું જ છે. Is imagine. Swami Shri said that he lives on this earth. He moves with the spirit of God. In his breath, there is the breath of God. In his touch, there is the touch of God. In his voice, there is the resonance of God. Yet we think Swami Shri is human. There is so much in Swami Bapa. There is so much in saints like Gunathayan Swami. Yet we can't understand him. We tend to understand him. We say we understand him. But there's a big difference between really understanding him and thinking we can understand him. Only when we can really understand Swami Shri will we be able to extract the true happiness. And on a day like this, when it's the birthday of a great saint, what should we do? Now what do we normally do when we go to a birthday party? We take presents to people, don't we? Now it's the birthday of Gunathayan Swami. Has anybody brought any presents? Has anybody really thought what should I give to Gunathayan Swami? Has anybody thought what should I give to Swami Shri today? Has anybody thought that? Okay, if you haven't, it's a time to think. You've got the whole sabha. Now what can we give to him? Ishwar Swami, today while we were in the plane coming to Houston, he told us a very interesting example that occurred in the time of Maharaj. Sriji Maharaj, he came to one of his closest devotees, he was Parvat Bhai. Now Parvat Bhai, he was so pleased by seeing Maharaj. He was so elated, he said, Maharaj, ask anything and I'll give you. Normally it's reverse, God says that. But Parvat Bhai was so pleased, he says, ask anything and I'll give you, God, anything you want. This is the time we've come. Maharaj, ask anything and I'll give. It's his birthday. So Maharaj said, he smiled. Maharaj said, can I tell you one thing? He says, what? Don't you think the whole universe belongs to me? Including you? Parvat Bhai says, yes Maharaj, everything. He said, then what can you give me? If everything belongs to me, what can you give me? Then quickly Parvat Bhai understood. He said, Maharaj, only thing I can give you is to do what you say. Maharaj says, that's better. So it's the birthday of Gunathayan Swami. We can say, Swamiji, I want to give you, but everything belongs to you. So only thing I can give you is a part of me, is a part of my mind, is a part of my eye, is a part of my hands in your service, part of my eyes in your service, part of my mind in your service. So let us pray today that we understand Swami Shri better and give a part of us today in his service so we can go closer to Swamiji and Maharaj. Thank you very much. Sahajan Swami Maharaj.